Ready to go. Well, welcome to our special council meeting, Tuesday, February 27th, 2024. I'd like to acknowledge we're holding this on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation. We'll start with the adoption of the agenda. Anybody wishing? Councillor Southcott, seconded by Councillor Isaacson. All in favor? Motion is passed unanimously. Item number 2 is bylaws. First is draft bylaw 2740-2024. Ms. Dennison, will you be speaking to that?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am presenting the City of Powell River Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw 2740-2024 for first 3 readings. The Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw is a bylaw that municipalities are able to create under Section 177 of the Community Charter. The purpose of this bylaw is to have in place in case of an unanticipated emergency that may cost the city more money than it has until property tax revenue is collected in July. So seeing as municipalities collect the bulk of their revenues right in the middle of the year, and seeing as there could be an unanticipated event requiring more revenue than some municipalities have, the Community Charter 177 section was created to allow municipalities to borrow funds in the event. So this, I have not seen the city borrow against this bylaw. It has been done every year. Most municipalities put these bylaws in place, and the maximum amount that we are able to put in this bylaw as a limit is 75% of the prior year tax levy, which in this case is about 15 million. Again, I don't anticipate this bylaw being required, but to be prudent, we like to have it in place should a worst case scenario arise. With that, I'll invite council to open the floor to council for any comments or questions.
Do you have a motion?
I move that City of Powell River Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw 2740-2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
Any further discussion? Councillor Plum.
Mayor, thank you through the chair. I just have one question because I'm racking my memory bank here as to how many times we've done this over the years. And when I think back, I can recollect in the near term, we've done this a few times recently in recent memory. But when did we start actually officially making this motion?
Through the chair, my memory goes back to 2017 when I started, and the CFO of the day I know put one of these bylaws in place. So 2017 is my earliest recollection, and that's also when I started. So I don't know if it was predating that, but I do know that we have done it annually since then.
Thank you, Ms. Denson.
All in favor? Passed unanimously. We'll now move to 2.2, Draft Bylaw 2741, Financial Plan Amendment.
I'm presenting the 2023 5-year financial plan bylaw 2715-2023, amendment bylaw 2741-2024 for first 3 readings. The background for this bylaw is that the community charter allows for financial plan bylaws to be amended when required. The legal interpretation is that we are able to collect budget amendments as motions from council and amend the actual bylaw right before the subsequent bylaw is likely to take effect. So this report includes all of the resolutions throughout the year related to amending the 2023 5-year financial plan and actually amends that bylaw. An example would be after adopting the 2023 bylaw, it was announced that the city would receive a large growing community fund grant. And we didn't know that before the bylaw was adopted. So that's one of the amendments that was made early on, and now we'll actually update the bylaw with that information along with the others.
Thank
I
you.
will open the floor to comments and questions.
We'll deal with questions first, if anybody has a question. No questions, I'd like to move a motion to amend draft 2 of the 2024 5-year financial plan to remove all funding for the Zunga bus. And if there's a seconder, I'll speak to that. We have a seconder. Thank you. So in looking at all of the financial information, the significant amount of money that will be spent each year, which approaches $300,000, is so large in comparison with all of the savings that we have made by cutting a wide variety of programs. It just makes no common sense. I want to read some thoughts from a resident.
Mayor?
Retransportation and Zunga bus.
Mayor, sorry if I may. I think you might be referring to the next agenda item. This current agenda item is just approving all of the 2023 amendments. And I think you might be looking to amend the 2024
Thank you
plan.
very much. We'll move back to 2023 and we'll get out of the future. Councillor Elliott.
I think we need to postpone the motion that's on the floor to the next agenda item, and since it was properly put on the floor.
Yes, Chair, if you can vote to postpone the motion and we can address it at item 3.3.
Yes, Councillor Doudt.
Wasn't confused before, but now I am. I thought that this item, which is the amendments, it's 2.2, was dealing with amendments that council has made so far for the financial plan. And if that passed, then the next item we would go on to was approving the 2024 financial plan as amended. So, I don't know how we can approve it as amended and then after it's approved, go on and approve the amendments. Doesn't seem to be a reasonable order to me. I'd say if you're going to make amendments to the financial plan, you need to make the amendments before you approve the plan, not after.
Point of information, the amendment draft bylaw is related to the 2023 financial plan. So it's stuff from our financial plan last year, not the ones.
Was asking the corporate officer, but
Through the chair, the item that Ms. Dennison is speaking to right now is the 2023 financial plan. So all of the motions that council made in 2023 to amend that plan, those are now getting compiled to amend that plan's bylaw. Once that's amended, we can move to the 2024 plan and start reading that plan's bylaw. Does that answer your question?
Any further clarification required? Councillor Elliott.
So I think we just need to, I'll move that we postpone the motion that's on the floor to the next agenda item, and then we'll vote on that, and then we can move forward with the agenda.
Great. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you.
And then I could make that motion if you like. I move that the 2023 5-year financial plan bylaw 2715-2023 amendment bylaw 2741-2024 be read a first, second, and third time.
All in favor or discussion? Councillor Elliott.
I just wanted to explain. So we made motions throughout 2023 and implemented those motions for changing the plan. And then the bylaw then needs to reflect what we've already done in 2023. And so this is a bit of housekeeping for decisions that were already made and implemented in 2023. Thanks.
All in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion is passed unanimously. Now we'll move to 2.3, draft bylaw 2742, 2024. Ms. Dennison.
Thank you. The Community Charter, Section 165, requires municipalities to adopt a 5-year financial plan before May 15th annually. The city started its financial planning process in August 2023 by establishing the budget schedule shown on the screen and in Appendix B. Since August, the city has completed an online and in-person budget engagement, set sewer utility and parcel tax rates, presented draft 1 of the financial plan, completed an in-depth cost savings proposal, and an in-depth analysis of the 2024 property assessments. This brings us to draft 2 of the financial plan being presented today, which includes all changes since draft 1 proposed in November. Draft 2 has formed the City of Powell River 5-year financial plan bylaw 2724-2024, which is seeking a first reading today. Changes could still be made to this bylaw after the first reading and before the second reading. As an aside, this report focuses on the 2024 5-year financial plan, which will establish the property tax revenue the city is required to collect in 2024. Once this amount is known, the property tax rates will then be proposed in March. So please note that property tax rates used in this report are estimates for purposes of showing the high-level impact of the property tax revenue on an average single-family dwelling. In other words, to boil down what 24 million in property tax revenue means for an average single-family dwelling. So that's the purpose of any reference to an average single-family dwelling cost is a very high-level estimate at this point. Now on to the changes to draft 1 to bring us to draft 2. Property tax revenue has had an increase and a decrease since draft 1. You'll see on the screen, the blue and green bars show the property tax revenue in 2023, 2024 draft 1, and 2024 draft 2. The decrease in the blue bar in the middle is draft 1, to the far right is draft 2. So that decrease from 23.2 million in property tax revenue to 22.9 million represents the $300,000 in council-directed savings from the January cost savings initiatives. This is roughly a 1.3% decrease to property taxes. Now, there is also at the same time, sorry, I'll back up here for a minute. I should also highlight that the line at the top is showing the cost for an average single-family dwelling. So we can see from draft 1 to draft 2, $92 or 3.5% decrease to the estimated property tax for an average single-family dwelling, relating to that $300,000 savings. At the same time, property tax revenue increased by 1.6 million, as shown by the green bar, and that's a 6.9% increase. And this increase was talked about in depth in January in the assessment report, which is linked in the appendix. But I'll just simply note that the 1.6 million is set up as a property tax stabilization reserve. It's taking the excess revenue that major industry will produce this year with the end of the revitalization bylaw and saving it for future when major industry may produce less revenue than what we're anticipating in 2024. So that's a savings program. And though there is a 15% increase in property tax revenue, the average single family dwelling will be feeling closer to a 6% increase because of this positive shift in the assessment. That's explained in detail and is a complicated topic, but explained in detail in the assessment report from January. So that is the change in property tax from draft 1 to draft 2. There were other changes in revenue, and the most notable change is an increase in grant revenue of $213,000 from the provincial government. It's a grant for local government housing initiatives. The city did not apply for this grant. We learned about it between draft 1 and 2, which is why it's being included at this point in the process. These funds have been allocated to the new OCP special project. Overall, revenue has increased by 2.8% or 1.7 million since draft 1, mainly resulting to the changes in property tax and the new grant. Expenses have increased by 1.4% or 670,000 since draft 2, but this has not impacted property tax. This is mainly due to $700,000 of software capital costs being reclassified as operating costs. As software has evolved over the years to be web-based and hosted on the cloud, it has become less of a capital asset controlled by the owner and more of an annual operating cost. So after careful analysis of PSAS, which is our accounting standards, and some really exciting discussions with our auditors, it was determined that these software capital projects no longer meet the definition of an asset. The impact of this is that instead of the expenses being spread out over the next 5 years, they have all been moved into 2024. Again, this did not impact the property tax since these projects are reserve funded. There were some changes in capital as well since draft 1. The first most notable change is a $1.8 million decrease, and that's roughly 4%. And that's due to change in carry forward estimates. The draft 2 carry forward estimates is based on more robust information compared to draft 1, which was an estimate made in November 2023. The carry forwards, just for context, is essentially saying that projects that will go from 2023 to 2024, an amount of that project will be in 2024. And when we estimated in draft 1, we had that number was 1.8 million too high from what we can see now. So 1.8 million more of approved costs will land in 2023 than 2024. So this is carry forwards are timing and timing estimate. The other notable change in capital is the, as mentioned previously, decrease of 700,000 that is now classified as an operating cost. The appendix details $100,000 of new project requests, and there were some small increases and decreases to current projects based on estimates from new information we've gathered since November. Of course, the changes in revenue, expenses, and capital costs impact the reserves and surplus balances. Reserves and surplus are savings for future capital and operating costs. So this report provides a forecasted reserve and surplus schedule summarized on the screen. The total reserves and surplus are estimated to be 36 million at the beginning of 2024, and estimated to increase by about 900,000 in interest, and increase also from 8.6 million of transfers into the reserves. The 2024 transfers out of the reserves are roughly 24 million, which is mainly for capital projects. This would result in a 39% decrease to reserves in 2024, with an ending balance of about 22 million. The reserves are balanced between 2024 and 2028, meaning that draft 2024 5-year financial plan has sufficient reserves to fund the capital and operating costs for the next 5 years. So in summary, the 2024 5-year financial plan outlines revenues, expenses, reserve transfers, and capital costs for the city between 2024 and 2028. Included in the revenue is the property tax revenue required to balance the budget. The property tax revenue is collected from all the taxpayers based on the property tax rates that will be set in March. But at this point in the process, it is nice to estimate the impact of draft 2 on an average single family dwelling using mainly 2023 tax assumptions. So given this, the city charges municipal property taxes and user fees on the tax notice. It also collects taxes for other authorities, such as the Cathet Regional District. The city remits these funds that are collected to the other authorities to streamline the property tax collection process. So roughly 30% of the total property tax notice is collected for other authorities. The city retains 70%, roughly, of the total property tax notice. So given this, the estimates on a pro forma property tax for an average single-family dwelling, with the assumptions we currently have, shows the property tax increasing by $162 or 6.7% over 2023 for a cost of $2,567. The flat tax has not changed. It remains at $50. Parcel taxes are increasing by $21 or 4.9% for a total of $442. User fees are increasing by $42 or 6.7% for a total of $662. So altogether, the total estimated increase in municipal property taxes and user fees would be about $225 or 6.4% for a total cost of $3,720. The property tax rates for other authorities are not known at this point, but estimates have been used based on draft information that is available at this point in the process. It is estimated that an average single-family dwelling would have an increase of about $177 or 12.7% in property taxes to other authorities for a total of $1,566. So altogether, the property tax notice would increase by $402 or 8.2% before the homeowner grant is applied. Again, property tax rates will be discussed in March, and these figures are provided for high-level demonstration purposes only, solely to put the financial plan into context for a property taxpayer. We'll also be receiving the revised assessment roll closer to the end of March, which will again impact our property tax rates. So I can't stress enough that we don't have the complete information, but we do have sufficient information to give some high-level information to help put the budget into context for taxpayers. With that, I'll conclude and open the floor to any comments or questions.
Silka.
Okay, Mayor. I read very carefully trying to figure out the change from capital to operating budget for the software systems. And finally, I figured out that it didn't make any difference really to the money was just going from one budget or one section of the budget to the other. However, the question remained in my mind is, does that represent, are we seeing any change in actual cost for operating? Like, is it costing us any more or less to go to a web-based, cloud-based type system from what we used to do? You know.
Through the chair, I don't have the exact figures. I'd say we would need to look at it on a case by case. Some software scenarios, it's cheaper, and for others, it's more expensive. I would say the larger ones tend to be a bit more expensive in that model, and the smaller ones tend to be cheaper, but I don't have the exact figures. Overall, we're at a point with our software where we're generally not having the option to have on-premise desktop applications. And for those types of software that do offer that, we run into risk. They can so much easier be attacked, or if we lose the data, we have some backups in place, but it's easier to lose it than if it's hosted on the cloud. So it's a great question. Overall, I think it really depends on the software. And but overall, I would say the pros outweigh the cons with the direction that we're seeing the software industry move.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we've made some changes, and some of those changes impact future years, not just this year. Did we have a futuristic idea of what tax increases might look like over the next 5 years rather than just this year? Or did I miss that somewhere?
Yes, through the chair. I wonder if I've got the slides here. So let me do the math here in my head. So originally 2025 was closer to an 8% increase for property tax. And now it's closer to a 6% increase. And then in 2026, the 7% is closer to 5% increase. However, I will say every year, the next property tax, the 2025 property tax amount will be something we talk about between August and March. And so it's the starting point, but it's not by any means set in stone.
Okay.
Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. I know, like, when you were talking to other CFOs and when I'm talking to councillors in other municipalities, we often ask each other about tax rates, and usually the number that gets used isn't the single detached dwelling number, it's the like the total municipal fees. I'm wondering, so it's 6.4, I believe, for this year, the total municipal, you had it up before.
Mm.
Don't think that's the one I was looking.
Through the chair, would you like the graph?
Oh, maybe. So I had a 6.4 written down. The go to
yeah.
pro forma tax
Yeah.
notice. So for example, here the variance. Okay, no, never mind. That is the, okay. So yeah, what is the change in numbers for the like total tax collected as opposed to the, and the change between draft 1 and draft 2?
Yes.
So that is 6 point.
Through the chair, the total tax collected is so between draft 1 and draft 2, the total tax increase is about 1.3 million or 5.6% higher. And for an average single family dwelling, however, between draft 1 and 2, that number has gone down by $92 or 3.5% because of the shift in the assessment. Is that the question? Maybe repeat the question for me.
Yeah, so for example, if after draft 1, another CFO called you up and said, what sort of tax increase are you looking at this year? You probably would have looked at the overall tax collection and the increase would have been
15.1%.
15.1%. And then in draft 2, now you have more information.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
What is that percentage?
Sorry, I apologize. Draft 1 was 9% and draft 2 was 15.1%. Mainly driven by that 1.6 million in property tax stabilization. So it's a very complicated message to convey, which is, you know, at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about property tax increasing and decreasing. I didn't want to present that it's increased by 1.3 million because what happened was it increased by 1.6 million to save for the future. And that 1.6 doesn't affect average single family dwelling. And then it decreased by 300,000 in cost savings. So, that answers the question.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's not as straightforward. Thank you.
Okay. There's Councillor Selka.
Thank you. On page 17, I think it is, down in project cost estimate increases. I was looking at the one for the ladder truck for 2026, and it's 700,000. That I just wanted to confirm that that is an increase, correct? It's not for the total value of the vehicle.
Yes, through the chair. When we were refining our capital plan estimates, we noted a similar ladder truck sale had happened, I believe, in Qualicum, and compared it to our numbers. And even though we had increased it for draft 1, we needed to increase it more for draft 2 to be more in line with what we're seeing. I think overall equipment has been the most shocking increase for all municipalities this year. Construction has been high over the last 3 years, but equipment is seeming to even outpace construction.
Could I ask the CO if this is the appropriate time to consider the motion that was deferred?
Yes, Mayor, you can do that now.
Read the motion, please.
Yes, so the postponed motion that is now on the floor is the motion to amend draft 2 of the 2024 5-year financial plan to remove all funding for the Zunga bus.
Thank you. So I will continue the rationale for this. We just listened to Ms. Dennison talk about all of the thought that went into saving $300,000 by cutting significant number of projects that could benefit staff in the community. And now we're looking at almost a $300 budget item, which provides a benefit to less than 2% of the population of Powell River. And when you delve down into the numbers, it's probably more like less than 1%. And so here is a comment from a resident. Transportation and Zungabus, article in Cathette Living. I found this 8-page report conflicting and disturbing. The Zungabus is not operating as a bus. It is operating as a taxi in direct conflict with the local taxi cab company and other privately operated transportation companies. The Zungabus takes people door to door for $2.25. In the article, it states that it costs the municipality about $13 per ride. This is not consistent with the figures quoted in the article, and appears it's costing the municipality $20.3 per trip. It caters to a small percentage of the people in a small area of town. Within Westview, almost taxi fares are around $20. So the question really is, do we want to spend close to $300,000 a year with minimal impact on 1% of the population of Powell River, when we could do one of two things? We could use that money to reduce the increase in taxation by about 25%. Alternatively, we could use that money to fund activities that would significantly improve Powell River for all of its residents. And so, to summarize, I think this probably be the worst financial decision I've ever seen any entity make with expending money that comes from the residents of the city. Councillor Palm.
Your Worship, I concur with your comments, as my votes have demonstrated in the past with regard to the motion on the floor and Zungabus funding. When you look at the big picture, the number of cuts that we have made in this particular year are drop in the bucket as to where we need to go, in my estimation, having sat here for many budget discussions over the years. I have a question, because it will impact where this vote goes, and that is, have we factored into the increase in terms of the resource center coming online and having to staff that facility halfway through this coming year?
Through the chair, it's my understanding that the City of Powell River will not be staffing the resource center. I'm looking to colleagues to confirm that. Perhaps Mr. Fraser might be able to confirm.
Test 1, 2. I always like to test these, sorry. Through the chair, so we won't be staffing the resource center with city staff. So the plan would be that we'll deliver garbage and organics to the facility, and that the facility will be run through the QRD through a contracted service.
However, just for clarification, city taxpayers will be on the receiving end of 50% requisition down the road on those costs overall, correct?
Through the chair, that does relate to the taxes for other authorities that I mentioned before, where the city doesn't control the taxes from the other authorities, but they do get levied on our tax notice, so it can be confusing there. What the cost increase will be down the road, I can't say. I can only see what I see in public reports from the QRD.
So the point I'm trying to make is
Point of order, Chair. The motion on the floor is related to the Zungabus.
the motion on the floor.
Whoa. Time out, please. What is your point of order?
The motion on the floor is related to funding for the Zungabus, and so now we're talking about something different. So I'm wondering if that's...
No, I think we're talking about the budget and the impact that additional considerations could have on the budget. I'm going to allow Councillor Palm to continue.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate that. And I'm only trying to point out for council and the public that overall, the picture is not rosy. When you take into account what was just relayed, and the average tax increase for this coming year on your average home, we're looking at double-digit increase with the RD school district all factored in. That's on a lower priced home, not the homes that are on the upper level, which will be taxed great deal more than the percentage that you're outlining. So I just want to make sure the public is aware of that, council is aware of that, and the dire need that we need to sharpen our pencil and bring in cuts that are actually going to make a difference, the Zunga bus being one of them. Thank you, Worship.
Any additional, Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I have a few points that I wanted to make. I'm not in favor of the motion. The Zunga bus at this point in time is proposed to be funded through the Climate Action Reserve. Do I have that name right? And the Climate Action Reserve doesn't cover any of the operating expenses for things unless they're like pilot projects or things related to reducing our greenhouse gases. There's it's kind of restricted to certain things. So if we cancel the Zunga bus, it will have zero impact on the tax levy for this year or next year, or for as long as we are using that reserve. I disagree that it's 1% of the population. It's well over 1,000 people, probably up to 5,000 that go periodically in different times. They are our lowest income population. They are our most vulnerable. They're the people with the greatest mobility challenges. They're also folks who don't have cars, maybe, and it makes it possible for people to have no cars. It's accessible to the entire city because it connects with the rest of the regional transit into the downtown core and allows for workable solutions to people trying to get to work on time. The current transit system is absolutely unworkable as a commuter service for people to get to and from work all on their own, let alone if you have to get a child to daycare or anywhere else. The cost of living at this point in time makes the city of Powell River not a choice for people who want to come here, be a nurse or whatever, to run their families because of the lack of housing. When people are spending the bulk of their income on housing, they don't necessarily have the same ability to have a car like some of us do. I have a car. If I didn't, I'd definitely need a Zunga bus. The way we solve our livability issues here in our city is we invest in projects that can grow into a solution. Traditional or the type of transit that works in most cities is never going to work here. We're well spread out and our population density is too small. It's just never going to work in Powell River. We need something different. If we don't have it in our budget, we can't chase down the grants that we've been getting to make that Zunga bus. First of all, the purchases were funded through grants. The bulk of the operation has been funded through grants, and we can chase down more grants. We can't do that if we're not even committed enough to have it in our budget. It will make zero impact on what we charge people for taxes. And the potential for it to grow and be adopted by BC Transit in the future and make a real livable solution for our city is really good. I can't think of another single project that we could work on with that particular reserve that would benefit Powell River more than this one. And I'm not prepared to vote against it. I think that it's misleading to the public to say that our taxes are going to go down if you get rid of the Zunga bus, because they're not. We just don't have our Zunga bus, which we already paid the buses for. We have the staff for. We've done the startup, all covered by grants. And we can't chase down more grants if we take it out of the budget. It's not a good thing to invest that much into a project and give up on it at the first sign of struggle. It's good for our city, and I believe in it, and I want to vote for it. The second point, if you do want to lower people's taxes, the way I think we ought to do that is by making the reserve that we created in affiliation with the Mills Lands, the 1.2 million, and allowing that $400,000 to go directly to relieve taxes in this fiscal year. And that creates less security, but I actually believe the factors that we're looking at on the risk side aren't as dangerous as some other people do. I think I've looked at them, and I think we would be safe with a $1.2 million reserve in that front. So I'm going to vote no on this one.
Southcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also don't support this, although I do agree that we're facing fiscal stress. And I also believe that that isn't going to end anytime soon. Because, as our CFO mentioned, one of the most recent shocks is the increase in cost for equipment. If it's not that, it's something else. And I've seen jumping increases, particularly over the past 3 or 4 years. So when that happens, what it does is it threatens the resilience of our entire community. And resilience is the thing that I'm really most interested in. There are some basics that people need: a house and warmth, food, and a way to get around so that we can get to jobs, etc. The Zunga bus started in 2020. That's 4 years ago now. Back then, and since then, we worked over the representative of BC Transit quite thoroughly in our council chambers here. And a report that was given to council in the spring of 2022 suggested that in this fall of 2024, as early as that, even though that was 2.5 years later, which didn't seem that early at the time, there was a possibility that BC Transit could advance their schedule, their 5-year planning cycle, in order to integrate the Zunga bus into our overall transit system. And the vision back then was that maybe we could have 3 or 4 Zunga buses that would be fully integrated into the transit system. It has been proven in many other communities in North America that this particular scheme works far more effectively for smaller communities like ours. And as Councillor Elliott said, the big regular scheduling bus type system we'll never be able to afford in a way that's really going to work well for people. When I was a kid, kids got to that driving age and then they bought cars. That was assumed. And I see quite a few of my generation in the audience here who we all assumed that. And I bet we all had cars by the age of our late teens. That's not the case anymore. There's an increasing number, particularly of young people, who can't afford cars anymore because they're affording lodging and food and other basics. That is a fact of our present reality. So how do we accommodate that without sending those kids out of town so that they can get buses in Vancouver if they can even afford to live there or get jobs? It's like there's a whole lot of questions this opens up. Yesterday, I received by email a survey that the Youth Community Action Team members compiled, and I was told yesterday that they were sent to everybody, but when I checked my email just a little while ago, I noticed that I was the only recipient of the email that I received, so I'm not sure if the rest of council received that. But in the survey results, I noticed in 2 comments, these young people, mostly it was young people who filled out this survey, also mentioned seniors. And so we have an increasing number of seniors who are not driving anymore as well, but have been depending on the Zunga bus. And I know a number of them myself. I've run into them, so I've talked to them directly. The 1% or 140 people, I believe we had, the mayor quoted, I believe we had a report that not so long ago that actually numbered the number of users, not regularly, but over the time that the Zunga Bus has been in existence, at more like 700. I doubt if there are that many regular users. However, as this element 2 transit system is integrated into our transit system, I'd be very surprised if the number didn't go beyond that, because it actually does work. The vision was that the Zunga Bus was going to be incorporated. I think we still have hopes that that can happen by 2025. Our current numbers in our budget does not account for that. It also does not account for the fact that transit is half paid for essentially by us and half by BC Transit. So the numbers are for a full cost, but those numbers would change if BC Transit actually finally did get off their butts and actually integrate this into our system, so transit would work better for our community. And on the basis of that, and I haven't even mentioned that this came out of the Sustainability Committee, whose primary concern is environmental. As far as community resilience goes, that's very much looped in as well. But the real factor is that we're going to see poverty, and we're going to see it happen in very surprising places. We already have homelessness, and I don't want to see this exacerbated. And this is an opportunity we have here to continue to support the breadth of our community, and particularly younger people, who I'm very concerned about, to try to help them stay here. So I do emphatically not support the amendment to remove the Zunga Bus from our financial plan. Thank you.
I'd like to comment. First of all, consider the fact that before Zunga Bus, people got around. And I've been president of the Seniors Association. I've chaired the board of the Community Response. And I've got a lot of feedback from individuals. Not once have I heard a senior say the Zunga Bus was important to them. So I think we have to put rhetoric aside, and we have to look at some hard facts. And if this was such an important issue in Powell River, think about it. Powell River is known for its volunteerism. It's known for the ability of people to come together and address important issues in this community. I've suggested over 6 months ago that if this was a real issue, people would come forward and say, I will work on this. We'll put a non-for-profit in place. We'll talk to other people. But not a single person has come forward and willing to actually say, this is important enough that I would contribute time or money to. Therefore, I'm hearing a lot of rhetoric, but it doesn't resonate with me, because my experience is when something is important in a community, people who know how to make things happen, not just talk, will come forward and make those happen. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno. I know this topic's been hashed out at a couple of council meetings, so I don't want to add to that. I've already said my piece, and I agree with much of what Councillors Elliott and Southcott shared. But with respect to seniors, I just want to quote an email that we got from someone who works at Kiwanis Village as a staff person. Kiwanis Village, a subsidized apartment building for seniors 55 plus. I am alarmed to hear there's some discussion of the Zunga Bus being continued. This bus is a very important resource for low-income seniors, such as tenants at Kiwanis Village, and the many other seniors I have on our waiting list. And so we have received concern from people working with seniors in our community. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Palm.
Yeah, through the chair, Mayor and staff, I have just one quick question that Councillor Elliott keeps saying that if we cut the Zunga Bus, it wouldn't make any difference this budget. Is that correct?
Through the chair, it could decrease taxes, but it would require two separate decisions. So first, it's funded by the Climate Action Reserve. So if the motion is just to stop funding it, it would not affect property taxes immediately because the Climate Action Reserve would just get bigger. Now, the Climate Action Reserve is funded by the LGCAP grant, which can fund things that are currently funded by property tax, such as the Sustainability Planner. So the second motion would then need to be for the Sustainability Planner to be funded by the Climate Action Reserve. And in doing that, you would have a decrease to your property tax. So it's a yes and a no. It's a two-step process, should that be the direction. So short answer is it could, should a second motion be made.
Bus, we'd have that option. Secondly, Councillor Southcott, I'm surprised that you say you make reference to the youth of Powell River, which I very much supported in all my days here, when they can't afford to buy cars in this day and age because of the cost to run them and the cost of expense to buy one. However, Councillor Southcott, if you remember over the last great number of years now, we have put millions of dollars into our bike lanes. Those are for a purpose. And if there's no car to drive, grab yourself a bike. Okay, so that argument you just made, that kind of falls on my deaf ears here. Secondly, we this year have allocated $2.5 million to upgrade our present transit system in the coming future. I think it's next year, which serves all of the citizens of Powell River, not just those living in Westview. That's another good argument. Let's look after everyone. And BC Transit has stated, they have come here and said, we're doing a pilot presently elsewhere on on-demand service. And if that proves to be worth our while, we will return to Powell River and we will be able to help you out. Now, what's wrong with shutting down the Zunga bus for a little while until they can sort things out and bring it back? They're not going to penalize us because we're saving a few dollars. They're going to say, if that works there in Kelowna, we're going to come back to Powell River and we're going to help you out because we know you're already further down that road with your pilots and service. So there's another argument for sake. And lastly, I'm going to say double-digit increases are not sustainable. We all know it, especially for our seniors that are on a fixed pension income, which isn't increasing the way taxes are. So, Councillor Southcott, I have to say it because it's just about laughable. I've heard you over a number of years talking about budgets and talking about, well, they can defer those taxes. Yes, we can defer. We know our seniors don't like to do that because they're fiscally minded. And I just hope that we're not going down the road, Councillor Southcott, where you're going to say, but they can do a reverse mortgage. Heck,
Point of order, Chair.
that's
This
where
is
we're going.
getting disrespectful of other councillor and putting hypothetical words in his
Okay,
mouth.
order.
Off we go down this road of not being financially, sorry,
Okay.
Mayor, not
So-
being financially respectful to the citizens of Powell River, farther into debt and unsustainable, the unsustainable road we will go. Thank you.
Councillor Ellie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think it's necessarily to point out individual councillors when you're making your point. So that was the point of order that Councillor Isaacson was trying to raise. And for procedure-wise, when a point of order is made, you don't just keep talking, you wait for that to be resolved before you or continue or don't continue. And so I'd like us to follow that as a council. My point I was trying to make on this matter is to do with seniors. Almost all of the people who have contacted me with the most impassioned appeal for the Zunga bus have been seniors. I've had seniors tell me that they're not going to be able to go anywhere without the Zunga bus for whatever reason. The handy dart doesn't work for them. It is accessible to everyone in the city because it's possible to use funnels into the city from the new improved transit that we're using and use the Zunga bus to get to where you need to go when it's not on a route. We don't have very many places that people need to go on the transit routes. So if you're a small business and all of your workers are showing up by transit and going home by transit, you're going to lose a lot of worker ability to get to and from work if the Zunga bus goes away. There's people relying on it and using it. And the bikers you're talking about, there's lots of days of really bad weather when they can't use their bikes and they don't have a car. And so you can't just stay home because the weather got bad. I mean, maybe you can, but a lot of people go to work and on a bad weather day too. And so most of the lower income industry and jobs and employers rely on lower income workers. And we need to find a better way for people to afford to get to and from work when the job doesn't pay as much as it needs for a livable wage, because those jobs are supporting small businesses and our community too. And we are in a situation right now when every single business I know doesn't have the amount of workers they need in this community. They can't get enough workers, and it's because either the business doesn't support a higher wage in order to get more people, or there just doesn't enough people who can afford to live here to come and do those jobs, or the young people of today can't get from where they are on a regular basis reliably to work. And so we need to solve this problem in a community that is neither dense enough nor populated enough to do it with a traditional style of transit. And we're not going to get there if we keep giving up on everything we start trying. All the money we've put into this Zunga bus already has shown us has piles of potential. And yet it absolutely supports seniors. And like 50% of the feedback I've received personally has been from seniors who use the Zunga bus. And maybe they're talking to different seniors, I don't know, but those are the people who are making impassioned pleas to me. And it does make a good business case for investment. The reserves are intended for investment. The sustainability planner got us all these grants in the first place. That's how we ended up investing in this pilot project. Anyway, I think I'd like to leave it in the budget, chase down grants as hard as I can over the next 2 years, and see if we can't get the government to cough up some money to help us out. I can't guarantee that because I got to go chase it down, or we as a team, as a council, we won an award for that bus at the last UBCM. We won an award. Thank you.
Do you have any additional comments? I will call the motion. All in favor? Opposed?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm brain fart. Could we please call that again? I was not.
In favor of the motion?
Thank you, Mayor.
Opposed? Motion is defeated. We have a recommendation. Somebody wish to pursue the recommendation?
Can read that, Mayor. I move that draft City of Pell River 5-year financial plan bylaw 2742-2024 be read a first time.
Discussion? All in favor? Nope. Discussion. Councillor Doudt.
Just, the last conversation, I think, took us away from the main thing that we're voting on right now, and which is the expenditures that the city is going to be making. And when I look at this, I see a balance between providing services that the residents of the city want and the cost of those services. Yes, it's going up, but they are valuable services and they contribute to making our community the place where we want to live. This is a much lower tax increase than the first draft of the budget we saw. And there has been a lot of work by everybody around this table in reducing it to this level. I know it's not enough for many people, and all of us wish it could be lower. But again, I think it strikes a balance between services and the cost of those services. And it looks at, and we looked at, through the whole process, we looked at a lot of things that could have been cut from this budget, but a lot of the things that could be cut make this community what it is and are the reason that people come to live here and make it their home and raise their children here and hopefully raise their children more. So we've got more young adults and more middle-aged people here rather than the increasing number of seniors. So I'm in favor of this budget. There's been a lot of work put into it. I know that we will be reading all kinds of different percentages in there, but I think the one that I'm looking at is the total tax notice before homeowners grants is 8.2% for everything everybody has to pay for their home. And I think that's what it costs to live nowadays and what it costs to be in the exciting kind of community we're in, where we can do things that make a difference to people. So I'm in favor of this, and I hope it passes.
Great. I'll call the motion. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is passed unanimously.
No, one opposed.
Voted against, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry. We had one voted not in favor of the motion. So the motion passed 6-1. Thank you, Ms. Dennison.
Thank you.
It was excellent. So we'll now move to unfinished business. Select Committee on City-Owned Properties, follow-up discussion. Councillor Doudt.
Yeah. This is kind of an unusual place on the agenda for correspondence to be, but it's here because it got postponed from a previous meeting. And it's an interesting route this took to get here because this is a communication from 4 members of the committee. It's not something that was created at a meeting of the committee. It's communication from 4 members. I've got a bunch of comments that I want to make to understand, so everybody can understand my position on what I think we should do. And first off, I want to read the terms of reference, because if you don't know what the terms of reference are, it's kind of difficult to think how you could change them and how they could be too limiting or what they are. But the terms of reference are really simple. They are that the mandate of the committee is to provide recommendations to council regarding redevelopment of city-owned properties. In providing recommendations, consideration will be given to existing council policies such as corporate strategic plan, official community plan, sustainability charter, zoning bylaw, housing implementation plan, and land management strategy. Number 2, the committee is not a decision-making body and is not responsible for the implementation or management of recommendations provided. And 3, under the direction of the CAO, staff will provide support to the committee in achieving its mandate. However, staff remain responsible to the Chief Administrative Officer for their activities. The Director of Properties Development and Communications will be the primary staff contact for the committee. It's a really wide-ranging mandate that the committee has. It's basically to make any recommendations they want about any piece of city-owned property, and that they can ask for assistance from staff when they need it. The committee's got together a number of times. They met, had an inaugural meeting in June, met in July, September, and then their next meeting was February of this year. Back in September, we had a request that came to council from the committee, and it said that the committee had discussed potential changes to the terms of reference, including expanded scope, clarity of purpose, roles, responsibilities, membership, and council member representation as well as opportunity for training and staff presentations regarding housing options, types, ownership method, and municipal funding mechanism, reserve accounts, and other sources of revenue. And the committee requests council provide further instruction on the scope, roles, and responsibility. Now, when I saw that note in a report to council in September, I thought, I better go and check the minutes of that committee and see what they were getting at, because there's not a lot of information when you've got a mandate that says, tell us what you want to do with city properties and ask staff for any advice you need. That's a pretty wide-ranging thing. It's not limited in any way. It's not limited to any one property or any group of properties or any particular set of recommendations. It's wide open. So I went and I looked for the minutes of the committee. Couldn't find them. I thought I'd review the videos of the committee. Those committee meetings aren't available on video. I think they're the only committee meeting that the city has that's not available. So went to the February meeting. I'm skipping over a step. In December, the mayor brought a motion to council. He wanted to look at, I think it's 21 properties, Mr. Mayor, that he had in a package that included property at the airport, which we slated for development for future employment services. I made a motion that that be referred to this city-owned properties committee. When I went in February to the meeting, that motion wasn't on the agenda. And the committee was looking at what they were going to do and wondering what their instructions were from council about what should be done next. I thought I would, I got to the meeting a little bit late, so I looked to see if the minutes had been approved for that meeting, the one I was in, for the actual September meeting, which, the February one was the next meeting after the September meeting, but they hadn't approved the minutes yet, so I couldn't see what was done. And then we've got the letter that comes to us, and it asks council to do three things. First is to dissolve the select committee on city-owned properties. The second is to support a group of private residents to basically do the things that are part of the committee's duty. And the third is to provide staff report for that group. Now, I think my preference is to actually do nothing at this point, because I think we have a really specifically clear terms of reference for the city-owned properties. It's a wide mandate. I would like them to take advantage of the mandate and make recommendations to council. If we dissolve the committee, I don't think there's any other way that we can provide support to a group of ordinary citizens, which would all come at the expense of the taxpayers and needs to be overseen by the city. So I would like to, unless any of the members of the committee, the council members of the committee have any ideas, they seem to, I can't see what it is that the committee is concerned about with the elected representatives on the committee, because they don't say anything about it. And unless it's something anybody wants to change about that, I would be happy with the status quo, but I'd like to see the committee get the work that's been referred to it and work on making recommendations to council.
I'd like to ask,
That's my 2 bits worth.
just wanted to ask our CAO if she's had any relevant communications that might help Councillor Dowd understand where we're at.
Through the chair, I don't think I have anything further to add beyond what has been summarized by Councillor Dowd. Thank you.
Sir Elliott.
Thank you. I'm wondering if, so it concerns me that members of the committee are feeling frustrated enough that they think they should dissolve the committee. I think it hasn't met that frequently. It met until it made the first deliverable, and then they were looking at, well, how do we accomplish this final report deliverable without, and they've been, we had some discussions around that, and they thought that maybe asking council where the priorities should be would be helpful, and then that never happened. So they went September to February without getting feedback on what council would like, because the because the scope is so broad, it's very difficult to, they thought, to focus the conversation and make progress toward actual recommendations. Many of the interests on the committee are broad and varied, and focusing in on a particular priority didn't seem to happen in the few meetings that they've had since the first deliverable was met. So they were an amazing committee at coming out with recommendations under a time crunch with a clear direction, and did that extremely well. Given the broad ballpark of things they could focus in on to get work done, was problematic in that it seemed to have conversations that were quite broad, not focused, and seeming to not move forward. And they thought it would be best to get priorities from council to focus those conversations so that they could move forward in a quicker way. So that's what they were thinking, is just, there's just no, are we doing, there's so many things we could be talking about, and where's the priority? So that was what I understood of the frustration on the committee. This particular correspondence was, an idea was never discussed at the committee at all. So this is for people who have put some correspondence forward and made some recommendations. They are not recommendations of the committee, and in fact, this idea was not discussed by the committee. I do have a question. We have in the charter the ability to support certain types of committees. What would a task force be under the charter, and how does that work? Because I don't think there's any way for us to do that.
Through the chair, it's, from what I've read, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a committee of council. So I would have to do some further digging. However, if it follows the same parameters as a committee of council, it would essentially still follow the same as a committee, even if you call it a task force.
Through the chair, if I might add to that, having had some experience with task force, exactly as Ms. Laporte said, but also task force tend to have a time limit. We tend to have a very specific term that can be 6 months to deal with a very focused singular issue, compared to a committee that might have a broader mandate. Thank you.
Okay, any further, Councillor Pong?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Being on the committee, I'm kind of taken back by the request that's come forward, printed February 14th. And I think initially the frustration from the committee was in terms of how the terms of reference were laid out, because we concluded the first mandate, which was providing a number of properties for provincial government considerations by July 4th, which that was accomplished and sent forward to the provincial government at that time. And at the end of that process, that meeting, the committee was looking for direction, and it was lacking in terms of these terms of reference, because when you look at general item number 3, it says term of the select committee will end on May 30th, 2025, which is a long way down the road. And the committee was looking at each other, well, what is our mandate? What are we going to do? And there was no direction by staff, because bullet number 2 under deliverables simply says the final report of recommendations will be submitted to council upon completion of the committee's term, with no direction. So it's a quandary. And when we met when we had a turnover in staff, that was why we had the extended delay. Our last meeting, there was still questions about the terms of reference, which hadn't come forward. And we're all looking at each other, well, where are we going to go now? And we looked at the properties, we came up with some ideas, and we were going to put some type of, we're relying on staff to help us out. So that's where we were and where we are. And it's really quite shocking that this ask has come forward from a committee of 4 residents who want to take over our lands of city-owned properties and start deciding what we're going to do. I'm against this, this proposal, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Southcott.
Thanks, Mayor. So the terms of reference are pretty slim as far as deliverables go. In fact, the first deliverable was delivered, and the second one is simply a report to council at the end of the term, which is 2025. What I see in this letter is essentially the addition of another deliverable, and that is in the second half of point number 2, to investigate city-owned lands, research one or more lands, and form recommendations to council about city-owned lands. As I see it, perhaps this could be added to the existing terms of reference to increase the purpose of the committee and otherwise not make any other change, as Councillor Doubt has suggested. That would perhaps expand the purpose and provide more meaning for the people who do sit on that committee now. And I do have a question, that is, nobody has resigned from that committee, have they?
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, no, they have not. Thank you.
I'd make that what I suggested, a motion, if it's appropriate, as an addition to the terms of reference. But Councillor Doubt had his hand up.
Councillor Doubt.
I haven't spoken yet.
Yes, through the CAO. You had a,
Oh, through the chair, I think I'm out of sequence, but when there's a chance, I'd like to speak. Thank you.
right, Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Mayor Wasno.
Was Councillor Southcott's, for clarity, Chair, was Councillor Southcott's motion seconded? Or did he make one?
No, he didn't make a motion.
So there hasn't been resignations yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are some, if we don't give further direction. And so I think Councillor Southcott, some sort of motion adding to a deliverable would be worthwhile. I think where what I've seen in attending or watching online the different committee meetings, I see a couple things. One, like decision making and deliberation, and really this group is a group of doers. They kind of want to get in, roll up their sleeves, brainstorm ideas, and this sort of model is not conducive to that. And so even just the model of meeting in council chambers is awkward. And I think trying to I see this letter as an opportunity to just shake off some of the confines of council procedure. But if this committee is to continue even up under the auspices of a named task force, we still have legislation to uphold, especially if we're using staff resources to support the committee. So I think another challenge is we've got the beginnings of an upstart of the housing roundtable going by some housing providers in the community. And so if you have a group trying to focus on housing, which is not going to only be about city-owned properties, but will touch on it, and then you have this group, and then you have city staff working on plans, you've got a lot of groups working at cross purposes. And so I'm wondering if giving the committee some specific, if I think about our strategic priorities list and the use of city-owned properties, industrial land, light industrial land is one of those purposes. And so if we wanted to focus the committee on light industrial land and development of that, that could give them something a little bit more to bite on. I know a member of the committee referenced, brownfield development and focusing on city-owned property that are on brownfield. So like with a bit more direction to sink their teeth into, and ensuring that they're supported to be able to meet just around a table in workshop format, still following all the guidelines of provincial legislation. I think that could do something good. But I think if we were to do nothing, I think we would continue to see what we've been seeing so far, where they did great work when there was a deadline and a very specific ask, but frustration otherwise. So I don't have a motion on the floor yet, to offer, but I would support adding some more specific deliverables. It could be that, the next thing we task them with is more specific and in line with our strategic priorities on how we want to see city-owned land used. Thank you.
Councillor Doudt.
I've listened to all of this, and what we have from the committee that I know of is in the minutes of the committee, and then we have this additional information, which is a letter from 4 members of the committee. There may be others saying other things, but I don't know how many are saying what. So as far as focusing on something, I think, frankly, a lot of these questions could have been answered at the February meeting if the motion that was made in December to forward the resolution that came to council about 21 city-owned properties around the airport that could be used for employment services, if those had actually been forwarded to the committee and put on the committee's agenda, they would have had a deliverable that they knew that they could work on, how to make decisions on, and to go forward. That wasn't there, and I think if it was, it would have made a difference. With respect to Councillor Southcott's suggestion that under deliverables, we could basically repeat paragraph 1 of the committee's roles and responsibilities, I think that would be great. It would just clarify that they had a wide range of authority to do these things, and when they did them, those would be deliverables. But I would like to see the committee work on giving us advice on that. And if it needs to be too focused, it gets almost to the point where council might as well make those decisions and do that focusing ourselves, or have staff do it and precisely direct staff to make a report. So I would like to suggest that we take this all under advisement. Hopefully the committee can have another meeting. Anybody who wants to can attend. We can have a big discussion about it. And hopefully that those motions that have been sent to the committee for the committee's deliberation would actually show up in front of the committee.
So I believe our CAO wants to clarify your statement about whether or not that information got to the...
Through the chair, thank you, and thank you to Councillor Doudt for reminding us all of the motion that was before the committee. On our part, and the chair of the committee, there was a procedural error where there was a decision not to put that motion on the agenda for consideration by the committee. So they didn't receive it. So should there be another meeting, staff will ensure that it will be placed on the agenda so all of the committee members see the direction that council gave. Because as Councillor Doudt observed, that does give some very direct and specific information to the committee members. Thank you.
Just so clarity, they did receive that information and the chair decided not to put it on the agenda.
Through the chair to council, I think this was a misunderstanding about the role of staff in preparing agendas versus the chair. And to be fair to all parties, I think that was misunderstood, and the outcome was that it didn't get put on the agenda. Thank you.
All right. I would like to say that I support Councillor Doudt's suggestion is that there will be another meeting of the committee, and at that point they can discuss whether or not they as a whole wish to continue. And if so, if they feel that they now have clarity on their mission. And so at this point, I'm just supporting what Councillor Doudt had to say. So, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think the committee would really appreciate maybe whether it's under deliverables or just some thoughts around things we would support them talking about. For example, if we wanted to focus on the airport lands, they would love to do that. They would just, get all the maps and know what to request. The scope of the 100 and some odd properties that the city owns in order to investigate and narrow down on something, it is basically, it's a huge task for people who are just, they don't have their own staff to direct, they don't, and it might take a year just to gather the information in order to figure out where we should focus our attention, when if we could just tell them where to focus their attention, they could get on it right away instead of having to do all of the prioritization. So I'm on the committee and I see that struggle. Folks are wanting to be super useful and use their times wisely, and they thinking that some direction from council to focus on certain things might be super helpful, because then they would know how to do that and they would be really good at it. And so some of the ideas could be the light industrial, picking some brownfield lots and figuring out what's the best potential for a city on these brownfield type lots and what should we do there. It could be a focus on the airport lands, for example. Those have all been newly cleared. So I'm inclined to help them come up with that, but I don't know that a motion would necessarily do that prioritizing, because I don't know where every council are sitting. I'd like to do brownfield lands and a focus on the airport lands. Those would be pretty exciting. I would be in favor of that. I haven't made a motion yet, but those are my ideas.
No, Councillor Doudt then.
I was going to suggest that what Councillor Elliott's saying is very productive. She's a member of the committee and she can make those recommendations and input at the committee level and move forward.
Good. New business. The public comments attributed to an individual. So city residents have asked for council to clarify its position on hate speech. The city has stated publicly that it does not condone any form of hate speech. That is inconsistent with what we have stated in the past. Further, we do not comment on remarks attributed to individuals. So in terms of our civic protocols, there will be no discussion on any specific comments that are attributed to an individual today. Just to summarize, the city does not condone any hateful speech. See no additional comments? We'll move to questions. Does anybody in the audience have a question? Mr. Galinsky.
Thanks, Your Worship. I appreciate the opportunity. I had brought Appendix H of the 5-year financial plan draft because I was confused over it, but while I was sitting back there, math isn't my specialty, believe you me, I think I've figured out what the difficulty I was having in terms of interpreting percentages of the total tax notices. So I think I can fortunately go with that one with what I have now figured out. But through the chair, I'm hoping that the Chief Financial Officer can explain the process here on in terms of future drafts and final adoption of the 5-year financial plan draft.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Mr. Galinsky. The next stage for the financial plan will be for the bylaw to be referred to March 7th for second and third reading. Should it receive that, it would then go to the meeting 2 weeks after for adoption, which is March 21st. After that, and sort of coincidingly, we'll be talking about the property tax rates as well, which will be discussed in March and adopted in April.
I thank the CFO for that. She indicated that what I have before me here is a high-level view, so I presume that through the chair that as time goes on, these figures will be more closely ironed and finalized as we move closer to the timelines.
Through the chair, that is correct, and thank you for checking.
I thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity to pose questions.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward and state your name.
Imit Kwinanape, Lisa Moffat Etnan. I'm a member of the Select Committee on City-Owned Properties, and I signed that letter that you spent some time discussing this afternoon. I'm a little frustrated that other material wasn't shared on the agenda for you for that item to discuss. I know you're only able to view meeting minutes that the committee has approved, and we're a little behind in improving those. We have had a request into council since July to clarify on our terms of reference. So thank you for finally getting around to doing it. I did write a multi-page report summarizing a bit better than our meeting minutes, what the committee had discussed to date, what offers were on the table from staff and from committee members, and things that were outstanding that I was hoping would be included on the agenda for you to incorporate into your conversation. And I apologize for not writing an email in advance of this meeting, giving you a better idea of some of the things that we're looking for. I have no idea how the agenda is decided. We've never been asked what we want to talk about at future meetings. It would be great in the terms of reference if that was clarified. It would be great to have materials from staff that we've been requesting for quite some time, a map showing where all of these city-owned properties are with the land uses so that we can make decisions. We have no clear direction on process, and that's for us to decide, but we've literally showed up to meetings with maps on a wall and been handed dots and told to decide. Based on what? So I'm sharing this to clarify some of where our frustrations are coming from, and I am curious why the report that I sent out wasn't included for council to deliberate on today.
Through the chair, thank you, Ms. Moffat. I was using the notes that you had sent me to amend the minutes that weren't adopted at the last one. So the September minutes, I think that's what you're referring to.
No, there's like a 6-page report that I sent to the committee members and council previously. I can get it to you again. I believe you were copied on it. I have to check my email.
Okay. Yeah, apologies if I got it. I don't
didn't have it. Yep.
Through the chair to the speaker and to council, I do think that we can tighten up clarification for any committee about how they operate in terms of how the agendas are prepared, because I do see that there's been some confusion regarding the role of the committee in setting the agenda vis-a-vis council's direction to them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have anybody online?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded? All in favor? Motion is passed unanimously. Thank you very much.